Six Flags is the most well-known amusement park chain and houses over 160 different roller coasters in North America. I have decided to do another mass ranking video and attempted to rank every Six Flags coaster. While there are over 160 coasters, only 113 will appear on this list because of the mass amount of clones throughout the chain. Also, most of these will be predictions, as I have only ridden the coasters of Six Flags St. Louis. Finally, all credits for videos and music will be in the description. With all that said, let's get into the list. #113, Hoot and Holler. Hoot and Holler is about as small as a kiddie coaster can get. It's placed over a few overgrown plants and only has a few turns and drops. Even for a kiddie coaster, this coaster is boring. #112, the Zamperla Gravity Clones. These Zamperla Gravity coasters are everywhere. All these coasters consist of a tight helix and curved drop, so basically nothing. These are jerky but more fun kiddie coasters than the previous Hoot and Holler. #111, Magic Flyer. This coaster has a similar layout to the Little Dipper clones. The only difference is that this ride has a train in front and a slightly bigger drop. It still isn't anything special. #110, Little Dipper. This Great America wooden coaster is as tiny as a wooden coaster can get. It has a similar layout to the Woodstock Express clones, but much, much smaller. #109, Canyon Blaster. This Six Flags Magic Mountain kiddie coaster is similar in scale to the Great Pumpkin coaster at the Cedar Fair parks. Basically, very small, but has some surprising turns near the end. #108, Great Chase. This New England kiddie coaster is similar to the last, but with a larger drop and longer experience. It is still a kiddie coaster, so it can't be placed too high. #107, Wild E. Coyote's Canyon Blaster. This junior coaster is the biggest one so far, but it's in the worst setting, and is one of the more forceless. It's also another cloned coaster, but the only one in this chain. These are similar to the gravity coasters, but with another lap around the inside of the course, making for a longer experience. #106, Roadrunner Express. #105, Superman Krypton Coaster, and #104, Sprocket Rockets. These three coasters are all clones of each other, but I decided to separate them just because there were only three. These rides are similar in size to the previous, but with a tighter layout, providing a bit more force. #103, the Zero Family Coaster Clones. These family coasters are some of the more forceless in the world, but with the long ride duration, tight turns, and ridiculously long trains make these the most fun rides so far. #102, the SLC Clones. These SLC are the bad kinds, also known as the ones with hard restraints. These include Mind Eraser again, Batman, Kong, and Ednor. There is only one other SLC in the chain that places much higher than these. All of these rides are horrible, shaky, and rough, but are much more forceful and enjoyable than the previous kiddie coasters. #101, Ninja. This is the first coaster in the chain that I've actually ridden, and what a bad one to ride. Words cannot describe how horrible the transitions and restraints on this ride are. Anything is better than an SLC, but I was debating on putting this lower because of that awful Sidewinder. #100, Marchu de Milipatis. This La Ronde mini mine train is a slow and forceless ride, but is smooth for being so old. It has a beautiful setting in the trees. It also has some pretty good head choppers and surprising dips. #99, Mini Mine Train. This ride, famous for being in a Mr. Beast video, is not as smooth as the previous Mini Mine Train. However, the ride is a longer, faster paced, larger, and overall more thrilling experience. #98, Canyon Blaster. This Great Escape Mine Train is one of the worst in existence. You can tell the park doesn't care about how this ride looks, and the layout is short and boring. Every single turn jolts and the ride is overall too bumpy to enjoy. #97, River King Mine Train. This is another awful Six Flags St. Louis coaster. Overall, the layout, even for a mine train, is very boring. This ride feels like a kiddie coaster, which would be great if the ride was meant to be a kiddie coaster. Even the setting in the middle of a field with some trees is boring. #96, Runaway Mine Train. This Six Flags Great Adventure Mine Train is notorious for giving whiplash in most of the turns. However, the great setting over the pond and fast-paced experience makes it more thrilling than the previous mine trains. #95, Steel Lasso. This Frontier City roller coaster is a strange one. It is a Vekoma family invert, but has a much smoother experience than those of the Cedar Fair parks. It is also much more enjoyable and fast-paced. #94, Predator. This wooden coaster has some redeeming qualities. This includes the fun first half and decent airtime in the beginning. But after the turnaround, the ride enters some of the roughest parts of any wooden coaster. It turns from enjoyable to brutal. #93, Joker Funhouse Coaster. This is a surprising family coaster. Some people say that this is a kiddie coaster, but it has some fun and intense moments, including a low-to-the-ground turn and a dark tunnel. While it is a fun experience, I can only place a near kiddie coaster so high. 92. Steamin Demon. This is just a typical loop screw model by Arrow, but something about this one is much worse. This one is much jerkier and bumpier than the other loop screws, making it less enjoyable. 91. Wildcat. This small wooden coaster has nothing special. It has a splashdown at the end, but overall the ride is very forceless and has some rough patches. It is in pretty nice setting though. 90. Dahlonega Mine Train. This mine train over Georgia is in a very hilly setting in the corner of the park. The ride, however, is one of the smallest full-scale mine trains in the world. The only redeeming qualities from this near kiddie coaster is the drop in a tunnel and smooth experience. 89. The Outdoor Wild Mouse Clones. There are only 2 Outdoor Wild Mouse clones in the chain. These are Gotham City Gauntlet and the one at La Ronde, which I will not attempt to pronounce. Overall, these are the typical wild mouse coasters, forceful in the turns but pretty uncomfortable. 88. Goldrusher. This Magic Mountain mine train is one of the jerkier on the list. This is due to the extremely tight turns. However, the overall experience takes place on the side of a mountain, making for a good view and fun moments. 87. Monster. This massive wooden coaster at La Ronde is notorious for being rough and boring. The whole ride experience is weird, with shallow drops, slow turns, and it's very high off the ground. The whole experience is paced horribly and it has some rough spots. 86. The Boomerang Clones. None of the boomerangs in the Six Flags chain have the new and improved restraints. This leaves each boomerang being brutally rough during the Cobra rolls. However, the rides are still very forceful and can be fun in moments, but I can only place these so high. 85. Runaway Mine Train. This mine train is also notorious for being a rough ride, but the larger experience, cool tunnels, and great forested setting makes up for the jerky section. 84. Roar. This Six Flags America Woody is one of the first GCIs, but also one of the worst. It has a similar layout to Wildcat at Hershey Park, meaning very forceless and overall jerky. Overall, this GCI might even be worse than Wildcat because of the PTC trains. 83. Judge Roy Scream. Speaking of rough woodies, this one is definitely a shaking one. However, this one makes up for having a good few moments of airtime even if the setting, smoothness, and length is lacking. 82. The Dark Knight Clones. The Dark Knight Clones are sets of indoor wild mouse coasters. These effects aren't anything special because they are at Six Flags standards, but the indoor effects added to the forceful turns makes the wild mouse experience much more enjoyable. 81. Motocoaster. Overall, this coaster is a unique one. It isn't the longest or most thrilling ride, but the tight turns and launch on top of the unique seating makes this one a fun one. 80. Skull Mountain. Skull Mountain is a unique coaster in a very unique building. This building has the face of a skull with a waterfall. The experience isn't anything special, it's just a small indoor coaster that is quite forceless, even for being in the dark. 79. Firebird. This pretty new stand-up to floorless conversion was honestly better as a stand-up. The stand-up trains gave it a unique sensation. As a floorless, the painful and forceless layout shows, as it was definitely meant for stand-up trains. 78. Ragin Cagin. This spinning wild mouse coaster is one of the better mouse coasters in the world. It still has the forceful laterals on some of the turns, but the spinning adds a dizzying layer to this family coaster. These different trains make for a totally different experience. 77. Dragon. This often forgot about indoor coaster at La Ronde is quite the treat. It has similar turns to that of Skull Mountain, but instead of just being in the dark, it has different lighting effects, which is great for Six Flags standards. 76. American Eagle. This racing wooden coaster unfortunately hasn't aged well. It is one of the biggest woodies in the world, but with that added speed and length means much more jackhammering, especially in that helix. The roughness makes it hard to enjoy the long layout and decent airtime. 75. La Vibora. This Intamin bobsled coaster is a unique one. The setting unfortunately isn't great and the restraints can cause for some uncomfortable turns, but the slide-like track is very unique nowadays. 74. Alpine Bobsled. This coaster is a clone of the previous, but is in a much better setting and has a bit more comfortable transitions according to riders, making it a better experience. 73. Viper. This aero looper is a bit of a jerky experience, but it has a unique and somewhat forceful layout, especially that Batwing high off the ground. The shakiness takes away from the experience, but the tunnel and hang time filled corkscrews are a treat. 72. Demon. This aero looper is surprisingly smooth for its age. The ride has unique rockwork and lighting, but the second half definitely drags with its slow turns and corkscrews. 71. Runaway Mountain. This is the biggest indoor coaster so far, and it actually has some force. It includes some tight turns low to the ground, a few airtime moments, and the darkness adds another layer of fear to the experience. 70. The Pandemonium Clones. These spinning coasters are nothing to write home about. The cars are weird facing the other seats, but the spinning has some good force to it, and there is even an airtime pop in the second half. 69. Great American Scream Machine. This coaster gets a lot of praise. Some say that it has a rumble, which in my opinion adds to the experience of some wooden roller coasters. The airtime is that PTC Classic, which has a great floater feeling, and the setting is great over the lake. 68. New Revolution. This family coaster has surprising turns to it. Many low-to-the-ground turns take place below the trees, which have some good speed. Also, the circular vertical loop in the ride's great setting makes it a great little coaster. 67. Viper. This massive aero looper at Magic Mountain gets a lot of hate and a lot of praise. The ride is overall very jerky with its nasty transitions, especially the first half, but it also has some great hang time and force throughout its massive layout. 66. Ninja. This Magic Mountain coaster is probably the best suspended coaster still operating. It has a great setting on the side of the mountain and rockets down the hillside, swaying with each turn. It is a family coaster though, and that last lift ruins the pacing of the ride. 65. The 4D Free Spins. These rides are everywhere, and sometimes they're great, but sometimes they are horrible. The spinning is free, so you could get a boring ride experience or one with tons of flips. Overall, these rides are usually ones that enthusiasts ride once and never again. 64. Roadrunner Express. This mine train is one of the coolest in the world. It dips and dives off a cliff in the center of the park and has some intense turns that are surprisingly smooth. 63. Goliath. This Magic Mountain hypercoaster is the worst Goliath, even if it is the biggest. The ride has a huge drop in helix, which does provide some force, but everything else is drawn out, forceless, and the mid-course ruins the pacing. 62. Silver Bullet. The first part of this smooth Schwarzkopf is the intense vertical loop, which most circular loops are. After that, the ride takes a short experience through the tight turns low to the ground, which provides some good positives. 61. Whizzer. This unique family coaster has riders sitting single file in different toboggans. The ride goes through shallow but fun drops through the trees and has some tight turns at the valleys that aren't forceful but just pure fun. 60. Viper. This Coney Island Cyclone clone is quite a fun wooden coaster. It isn't rough and it isn't the most forceful, but it has a few airtime moments and fun turns that make it a great ride. 59. Screamin' Eagle. This wooden coaster in St. Louis is a fun PTC. The ride has some decent floater airtime near the end and it keeps its speed well. It also has a fast-paced and smooth ride experience through the tree chops. 58. Blue Hawk. This Vekoma looper is surprisingly smooth. It has some incredible head choppers, probably the best of any coaster, and the setting is great. The inversions are smooth and forceful as well, which all adds up to a great coaster. 57. The Boss. The Boss is a massive wooden roller coaster that takes place over the treetops. While it isn't the smoothest, it has nice laterals, great floater, and a very long ride on the mountain. 56. Wild One. This ride is a thrilling wooden coaster that hauls straight through the center of Six Flags America. It has some great airtime moments during the rumbly but smooth experience. It also has a tight helix throughout its long ride experience. 55. Green Lantern. This stand-up has a fun and forceful layout. It isn't the most comfortable, but also isn't unbearable. The ride starts similar to Rougarou before entering its unique second half. Overall, the ride is forceful and has some great whip in the inversions. 54. Georgia Scorcher. This is often considered to be one of the best stand-ups. It's very smooth, forceful, and is a pretty long ride. It also has a forceful elements, a whippy corkscrew, and it even includes a wave turn. 53. Superman Escape from Krypton. This reverse free fall coaster isn't very intense, but is certainly one of the most terrifying. The backwards launch straight up 400 feet will make enthusiasts scared. It's not intense, but a 100-mile-per-hour backwards launch is certainly thrilling. 52. Riddler's Revenge. This was the other SLC I mentioned. Unlike the others, Riddler's Revenge includes vest restraints, which eliminate all headbanging so you can enjoy the forceful and whippy inversions. The only thing that still exists is the bad setting and rattle. 51. Scream. This is a clone of another floorless coming up, but the setting on this ride is awful. It is set over old parking lot spaces, and the rattle on this ride is one of the worst on any B&M. However, the ride experience is tall, fast, and long, and it also has some great whip on the inversions, especially that 0G roll. 50. Riddler's Revenge. This Riddler's Revenge doesn't have headbanging or a rattle, and is the most comfortable stand-up possibly in the world. It has multiple inversions and a loop that goes over the lift hill. The ride is forceful, long, intense, and whippy, and is definitely the best stand-up. 49. Thunderbolt. This might be a surprising pick, but based off the POV, this ride looks fantastic. The pacing is great, and the drops and hills provide some nice floater, and the ride experience overall is smooth and enjoyable. Those unbanked turns also provide some great laterals. 48. Titan. This is the sister coaster to the previous Goliath on this countdown. However, while everything else is the same on this coaster, Titan provides a lot more force, all of which coming from the extremely fast-paced helix before the mid-course brake run. 47. The Spaghetti Bowl coasters. These coasters are Poltergeist at Fiesta, Texas, and Joker's Jinx at Six Flags America. These spaghetti bowls have lap bars, and unlike Flight of Fear, have no mid-course brake run, meaning riders don't have to sit through the uncomfortable straight track. Also, these manage to be more fun because riders can brace for the forceful turns. 46. V2 Vertical Velocity. This intimate impulse manages to be one of the 3 normal ones operating in the US. These rides are smooth and intense, but the straight backward spikes makes it worse than the now defunct Wicked Twister. 45. Superman Ultimate Flight. This Discovery Kingdom Skyrocket 2 is one of the better ones. It still has the great and forceful layout, but it has lap bars instead of the comfort colors, making this ride much easier to feel the force. 44. Flash Vertical Velocity. This has to be the best intimate impulse. It still has the smooth and forceful experience, but the first spike is tilted so it has an upward inversion, causing for some incredible hang time. 43. Batman the Dark Knight. It's unfortunate that this ride doesn't get talked about. While it is shorter, it has a smooth and forceful layout. It's full of whippy inversions, including interlocking corkscrews, zero-G roll, and an intense vertical loop. 42. Comet. This wooden coaster is one of the less talked about. It is in a beautiful hillside setting overlooking the park and has some big airtime moments and drops. The ride is a long double out and back and needs to be talked about more. 41. Tantrum. This is a typical Eurofighter layout, but manages to be very fun and enjoyable. It is short, but very smooth, fast-paced, and full of hang time, which includes a very wacky vertical loop. 40. Shockwave. This is one of the most fun Schwarzkopf out there. It starts with 2 back-to-back circular loops, causing for some very intense positive, and the rest of the ride is full of great floater airtime. It's also one of the smoothest Schwarzkopf creations. 39. Batwing. This Vekoma flying coaster is definitely better than the dreaded Nighthawk. It has the traditional layout instead of the shortened, and also is a much smoother experience. It's unfortunate that the setting isn't as good, but it still has the terrifying aspect of being face down. 38. Riddler Mindbender. This is one of the most thrilling Schwarzkopfs for its fabulous use of terrain. It isn't as smooth, but it dives next to the waterfalls and has the loops spread out for some more unique forces later in the ride. 37. Batman the Ride Clones. The good old Batman the Ride clone. These are basically at every park in the chain except for the smaller ones. They provide some incredibly intense moments into the forceful and kind of smooth layout. The rattle and just how many clones there are take away from the decent experience. 36. Bizarro. This B&M Floorless, which might be getting rethemed next year, is one of the best floorless coasters. It has everything you want in a floorless, from the smooth ride, good setting, whippy inversions, and intense loops. 35. Full Throttle. This premier launch coaster is often overlooked, but it really shouldn't be. Yeah, the ending drop straight into the brakes is pointless, but it has a backward section, is smooth, and has some incredible hang time and whip. 34. Superman Ultimate Flight. These are the clones at Great America and Great Adventure. These are both over flat grass fields, but have some intense flying maneuvers and also some great graceful overbanks. 33. Superman Ultimate Flight. This is the over Georgia clone of this ride, which meshes with the terrain extremely well. It dives through rocks, cliffs, and has some great near misses. 32. X-Flight. This is the only wing coaster in the chain, and it doesn't disappoint. It has quite possibly the best head choppers of any wing coaster, and the fog adds to the experience. It also has some great hang time over the graceful inversions. 31. American Thunder. This GCI isn't the best in the world, but it also isn't the worst. It has some decent airtime pops, and the near infinite amount of head choppers and turns makes this a disorienting ride experience. 30. Daredevil Dive. This coaster has some unique trains, but they are very open, causing for a fun experience overall. These open restraints makes it easy to feel the airtime, whippy inversions, and hang time through the barrel roll. 29. Medusa. This is one of the best floorless coasters because of its more unique layout. It still has the fun floorless coaster elements, but has a straight drop, different order of inversions, and a very unique sea serpent roll. 28. Apocalypse. While some say that this coaster is rough, they can't deny that this is one of the craziest GCIs in the States. It has some incredible head choppers and great turns. It also has a fast-paced layout with some incredible airtime moments. 27. Superman Krypton Coaster. Speaking of a great floorless coaster, this floorless has, again, all of the elements necessary for a good floorless. However, this ride includes a unique drop and helix on top of a quarry wall in the center of the park, making for a great setting and terrain-based elements. 26. West Coast Racers. People initially underhyped this ride. The dueling aspect really adds to the experience, and it actually works, unlike Twisted Colossus. The great airtime moments, and especially that wave turn, are great elements that add to the experience. It is also the only coaster in the world with 4 different launches. 24. Superman Ride of Steel. This Six Flags America hypercoaster is one of the most hated hypers because of the abundance of straight sections. However, the open restraints cause for some great floater over the massive hills, and the helixes remain a great place to put your hands up. 24. Ride of Steel. This Darien Lake version of the previous ride makes good use of the straight track. The only difference in the two rides is the addition of the lake around the ride, making the straight track feel like the rider is gliding over the water. 23. Goliath. This overlooked hyper isn't even a hyper, but it is still classified as one. It still has a great layout, including a river next door, fabulous airtime moments, and a weird off-axis hill. 22. Diamondback. No, the B&M Hyper is at Kings Island. This Diamondback is located at Frontier City, and is one of 2 aero shuttle loops in the US. These are great coasters which include 2 launches, one backwards and forwards, and a ridiculous pop of airtime going backwards. 21. Jersey Devil. This has to be the most disappointing Raptor because it had a lot of hype. Overall, the traditional Raptors are a lot better than this custom layout. This layout has a more spread out feel, causing for less whip and intensity. It still has some incredible moments such as the massive floater hill and zero-G stall. 20. Mr. Freeze. Mr. Freeze is a wacky experience. An incredible backwards launch leads into some very intense inversions and overbanks. The massive backwards spike actually has boosters, so the ride gets launched straight up. This leads into very sustained positive Gs for more than half of the rest of the ride. 19. King Dakar. This is the tallest coaster in the world, but it often gets overhyped. The over-the-shoulder restraints make it hard to enjoy the great views and the speed of the ride, but the intensity more than makes up for that. The launch is one of the most intense moments on any roller coaster. 18. New Texas Giant. This is the first RMC, and it manages to be the worst traditional one, but it is still an RMC, so it has some incredible pacing, airtime, and whippy moments of ejector. 17. Twisted Cyclone. This RMC is another incredible one. I'll be riding it next year to form my actual thoughts, but this ride has some of the most insane wave turns on any coaster ever built. It also has some great ejector moments, and while it is short, the great whip and the transitions makes up for it. 16. Superman the Ride. This is the best Intamin hyper in the chain. Unfortunately, the restraints on this ride are awful, eliminating most of the floater you'll feel, but it still has some good negatives, positives, and an incredible twister second half with tunnels and great transitions. 15. Tatsu. The pretzel loop on this incredible flying coaster is one of the most intense positives you can feel on a coaster, and being on your back through it makes it so much more intense. The feeling of soaring on top of the mountain through the inversions and tight turns is one of the best coaster experiences one could imagine. 14. Medusa Steel Coaster. This RMC is one of the weaker, but it still has a great layout. The incredible inversions and sharp airtime pops make it great, but it is lacking in transitions and off-axis moments. 13. Goliath. This wooden RMC has one of the best but shortest layouts. The massive drop and airtime moments make this one of the strongest RMCs, and the stall is incredible. However, it is just over too soon. 12. The Joker. This RMC is another overlooked one. It has a very whippy and strong layout, and while the twister layout doesn't work as well, it still has some good moments. These include an off-axis airtime hill, stall, and barrel roll. 11. Iron Rattler. This ride has one of the best first drops, as it whips to the side before plunging off a cliff. Speaking of the cliff, Iron Rattler goes on, off, and inside the massive quarry wall through a series of whips, dives, and inversions. 10. Nitro. This B&M Hypercoaster has one of the strongest layouts. It's in a beautiful wooded setting and has a very long ride experience through multiple airtime hills and tight helixes. 9. X2. This is another ridiculously intense ride experience and also is one of the most unique. It has rotating seats, so the seats will rock back and forth, causing for moments facing straight up, straight down, and multiple inversions. This causes the ride experience to be full of chaos, including a massive first drop. It's unfortunate that the ride is only good in the inside seats, and even then it is a jerky experience. 8. Raging Bull. This is a unique hypercoaster as it has a twister layout. The layout, especially in the second half, has a lot of great low-to-the-ground turns and surprise floater moments. The back row, especially on that drop, has an incredible ejector moment. 7. Superman El Ultimo Escape. This ride is one of the most unknown hypers, and for no good reason. It has an incredibly fast-paced layout with no trims, great airtime, and an incredible helix. 6. Goliath. This over Georgia hyper is one of the best in existence. It includes a massive drop that leads out of the park, tight airtime hills that goes over the trees and hills, and has one of the most intense moments on a B&M, with the tight spiral helix that increases in Gs as it goes down. Number 5. Wonder Woman Golden Lasso Coaster. Speaking of intense coasters, this original single rail coaster has the most fast-paced coaster layout. In just 30 seconds, the coaster whips through multiple airtime moments, crazy ejector pops, a dive loop, cutback, and multiple more other sharp transitions. 4. Wicked Cyclone. Similar to the previous coaster, Wicked Cyclone is a compact ride experience, but this time is much longer and more comfortable. It has a great drop in inversions, but it also consists of many outer bank turns. 3. Twisted Colossus. What can get better than one RMC? 2 in 1. Twisted Colossus, while it has horrible pacing, the racing experience plus the incredible amount of off-axis moments, airtime, inversions, and dueling elements makes this the standout RMC in the chain. 2. Max Force. Intense is the only way to describe this ride. The fastest acceleration in North America goes to this ride, with its compressed air launch into an ejector pop. Following is a short but sweet experience with the world's fastest inversion, hang time, and a wacky double inversion. Number 1. El Toro. Coaster enthusiasts shouldn't be surprised with this pick. El Toro is a relentless and smooth wooden coaster that people rave about. It has a near vertical drop, some of the strongest airtime in the world, and wraps things up with a section of back-to-back rapid transitions. Thank you so much for watching this massive video. If I missed any coasters, please let me know in the comments below. While you're down there, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Have a great rest of your day.